been reading this book for the second time. It's not the first time I'm reading it. I'm addicted to the Mahabharata. Anybody who writes any take on it is very interesting to me. This is so, she just strips it of all of its, that it's supposed to be about gods and, epic stuff and all. She just reduces it to what were the very human motivations of the characters of the Mahabharata. And in that sense, instead of feeling more isolated from them, or instead of feeling that they have fallen in your estimation, you actually feel much closer to them. You get more deeply involved in their lives and the reasons that, like what Raji was saying, the weird backstory or history or her story, that is exactly what this is about. If you have ever wondered why did these characters behave in this kind of fashion, I wager that you will get most of your answers here, or at least it will set you on the path to thinking about why they behaved in the way they behaved. While, because the Mahabharata is so large, we may not all know all the stories, plus there is so much other accretion of other stories onto it, in the sense that, our Krishna, when we think of Krishna, we don't think of the Mahabharata Krishna as separate from the Krishna of Gokula and Yashoda's darling and Nanda's darling and Radha's darling and the butter stealer. We think of all that get mixed up in that Krishna of the Mahabharata, and we feel very warmly towards the Krishna of the Mahabharata without actually thinking about what a shrewd, very human political strategist he was. And she explores the reasons. For instance, there are essays about very many different characters, but Krishna Vasudeva is one of my favorite ones, and Draupadi is the other one which I love in this book. She has Karna's story, she has Kunti's story, she has the story of Paradharmo Bhayavaha, which is like when you try and be somebody you're not. I think we have people who have attended my course, we did talk about it, how in the Gita Krishna says that your Varna is not based on your occupation or your birth, it's based on your guna and your karma. And Varna basically is your swabhava, what is your nature. And if you act in alignment with your nature, even if the outcome is not so perfect, better to act imperfectly in accordance and in alignment with your karma than to try and do somebody else's dharma perfectly. So parodharma bhayavaha, it is dangerous to try and be somebody else. And in that essay, she talks about how Drona and Ashwatthama violated the Brahmana code by trying to be Kshatriya. And they didn't fit into that, and that was their downfall. So for instance, just different essays. And I'm very fascinated by the one about Krishna because, actually it's a history lesson. But if you look up Wikipedia on the Janapadas, the 16 Mahajanapadas that were in India, the actual historical kingdoms, the 16 great kingdoms that were there in India around 500 BCE, you'll find that all of them have a big part to play in the Mahabharata. They all have characters. There is Gandhara, from where Gandhari came. There is Panchala, from where Panchali came. Then there is, of course, Kuru. We know that. Then there are the Yadavas who came from Surasena, which they were driven out of by Jarasandha of Magadha. So when you put that political map together and talk about what Krishna was actually doing, it presents a very different picture of what Krishna was. And this whole, you begin to wonder, what is this then about, what he tells Arjuna in the Mahabharata about being detached action, when he was actually doing a lot of things with great attachment to the goal. And what made Krishna superhuman? What made people who came after elevate him to the status of a god, according to Airavati Karve, is the fact that all of his effort to make the Pandavas win and to create political alliances that would be useful to them, it was his doing. He was the Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel who went everywhere and got everybody together to be on the part of to fight on the side of the Pandavas. And what made him great was that he was doing all of this not for himself. He never even ruled his Yadava clan. He put Balarama in charge of it. It was a contentious one. There were many people among the Yadavas. Yadavas were like fighting clans. They were always at each other's throats. And there were many people of his clan who supported Krishna and some who supported Balarama. But he didn't want any controversy. He said, "You're my older brother, you become." So everywhere he went around handing power to the good guys, because all he wanted was that Bharatavarsha, which had been divided into a very eastern bloc, western bloc at that time. If you look at the map, it all becomes very clear. The western bloc was headed by the Kurus and their allies, and the eastern bloc was Magadha and Jarasandha's allies, including Shishupala of Chedi. Like Chedi was part of the Jarasandha's alliance. So all that Krishna wanted to do was to make sure that Bharatavarsha would be peaceful and there would not be infighting. And to be peaceful, one thing is there should be one powerful king. He wanted to make sure the king at the center, that powerful king, would be a good one, would be one who was dharmic. I mean, Yudhishthira and the Pandavas, they had no abilities of statecraft. They were just very nice people. They were just really good people who always wanted the best for themselves and for their land. And so that's why Krishna manipulated all this to make this happen. And she talks about how when he met them for the first time at Draupadi's Swayamvara, right? That was when Krishna and Pandavas first met. And he saw, what's his name, Arjuna's prowess, he saw Bhima's prowess, and he said, "My God, these are good guys. I need to back them." Because his own Yadava clan had been thrown out of Surasena. Because Jarasandha, after Krishna killed Kamsa, he earned eternal enmity with Magadha because Jarasandha's daughters were married to Kamsa. So they became widows immediately after this. So he kept on attacking because Ugrasena, who was Krishna's grandfather, he didn't want him to be the king. So he immediately created this huge schism by killing Kamsa. So there was constant attacks, and then Krishna said, "We can't do this." He took his whole Yadava clan away, far away to the west, to Dwaraka in Gujarat. He said, "Let's leave Mathura and let's go there where we'll be safe." And since then, he had been saying how to win this back for the Yadavas. Who will be good enough to defeat Jarasandha? Who will be able to run them into the ground? And he found a very legitimate reason to do that, because Jarasandha wanted to ruin our Yudhishthira's Rajasuya Yagna. And he had imprisoned some 100 Kshatriya kings, which was breaking the Kshatriya code, and he wanted to sacrifice all of them, which gave Krishna the perfect excuse. And he said, this cannot be done. So, because to make the Pandavas attack somebody, you have to give them a very dharmic reason. Otherwise, they might hesitate and they might fight. So, with having done all, so what had happened was, so Indraprastha, remember when at Draupadi Swayamvara, he met them, and what happened at the Swayamvara was an amazing political alliance, because these guys were in the forest, right? They had no political alliances, but when they came out and won Panchali, suddenly Panchala and the house of Kuru, the Pandava side of Kuru, became one alliance. And because they met Krishna, who was their cousin, and they got on so well, and he said, this is the perfect thing. So Krishna, the Yadavas also came to their side. And then when they went with this powerful backing behind them to Dhritarashtra, he had to give them half the kingdom. And they built Indraprastha. And then Krishna says, oh, okay, so it becomes half the kingdom. Then I can completely forge independent alliance with the Pandavas. It doesn't have to get mixed up with the Kurus and the family. So that's what he did. And he set them all up. The Rajasuya Yagna was performed. Great support was given. Indraprastha was a glittering city. Everything had been established, and Krishna said, my work here is done, and he returned to Dwarka. Within a year, Yudhishthira had gambled it all away. Okay, and they were in exile in the forest. And Krishna's greatness, says Airavati Karve, was that he did not say, what idiots, I'm never going to help you again. He did not. He came and visited with Satyabhama. He went and visited them in the forest, and he said, okay, you guys, I mean, in his mind, he must have said, what idiots, but you're still the good people. So when you come back, I will help you win again. And this he kept doing through his life until once the Kurukshetra war was over. They had 36 years of peace in Bharatavarsha, but Gandhari cursed him and said, your clan will be destroyed in 36 years. And that's what happened. In the end, the Yadavas went at each other, destroyed each other. And while Krishna was still, he just collected all the women and children, put them in the fortress, and he came back to look for Balarama and to just find some rest. And he was resting under a tree when that Mura's arrow went through his, and you know that whole story of the Yadavas teasing some sage by dressing up as a pregnant one. They dress up one of their boys as a pregnant woman and asked for his blessing. And the sage saw through their ruse, and he was so angry. He cursed that boy that you will deliver something, and that will destroy the Yadava clan. And he did deliver an iron pestle, like a crusher. And then, to avoid that happening to the Yadavas, they powdered that pestle. They threw it into the sea. And 36 years later, when they went to picnic on the banks of the same sea with Krishna, some dispute started between Kritavarman, who had fought on the side of the Kauravas, and Satyaki, who had fought on the side of the Pandavas, because the Yadavas split in two. Some of them fought for the Kauravas, some of them fought. So these two started fighting about something, picked up the grass and started throwing it, but the grass was full of that iron that had been in that pestle and the whole. So anyway, that is all a different story. But I love her analysis, and I discovered that I did a little Wikipedia search on her and all that, and she is one of India's oldest first women anthropologists. Okay, so she was highly educated, came from a very highly educated family, was named Airavati because she was born in Burma, where her dad was serving in some official position, not in the war, like not in the military, but somewhere else, diplomatic or something, official, some government position. And she's born in Burma on the banks of the Airavati river, which of course the British have mangled and called it Irrawaddy. Anyway, she was born there, came back, and her dad was hopeful that she would marry into a royal family, it seems, but she disappointed him by marrying a Brahmin from a very sophisticated family, but they were a very academic family. Her father-in-law was a great supporter, a great pioneer of female education and all that. So she married this person called Dinkar Karve, whose father was a great pioneer of women's education. And funnily enough, her father-in-law was against sending her going to Germany for further studies. Okay, the one who had pioneered women's education. But her husband stood by her. She went to Germany, became an anthropologist, and wrote many wonderful books. Her children are also very well known. They have also written books and stuff. So yeah, all in all, fascinating author and fascinating book.